Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for being here. Our presentation this morning is called Belize, Lagoons, Savannas, and Forests, and it's with Victor Emanuel Nature Tours. My name is Donito Burgess. I'm the Community Engagement Manager up here at Tucson Audubon. I'll be joined today by Brian Gibbons. Brian is a guide with Victor Emanuel Nature Tours. Brian guides all over the world, North America, South America, Africa, Asia, but he's based right here in Tucson. So we're really, really fortunate to have him here today. And of course, if you've ever been in any of our field trips or attended any of our events, you always know that we start all of them the same way. And it's by reminding you why we're here. Here at Tucson Audubon, we're all about inspiring people to enjoy and protect birds. And we do that through recreation, education, conservation, and the restoration of the habitat upon which we all depend. So with that, just want to again thank you for being here. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Hold them for yourself.
Zoom just started on.
And then let's see. I'll go ahead and throw it over to you, Brian, and take it away.
Thanks, Donito. I'm excited to be sharing these images of Belize with you guys, and I'm excited to be hosting this trip with Tucson Audubon. We just started this, well, we tried to start it in 2020, but we know how 2020 went. So we did just this year in January. I was with Luke Safford, some of y'all may know from the local field trips around Tucson. He and I went to Western Mexico and had a fantastic trip with lots of great birds and lots of good folks. And I think several of those folks are coming with us on this Belize trip already. But I'll start with where we start. Everybody will fly into Belize at the international airport. And that flight from the US isn't included in the price, but once you get to Belize, everything is included except for the typical personal nature things, alcohol and laundry and stuff like that, but all food and non-alcoholic beverages is included. So once you're on the ground in Belize, we're going to be birding, and our first stop is this lodge that's right in front of us here. This is Bird's Eye View Lodge, which is just about an hour away from the airport. It sits on this big northern lagoon, and it's absolutely full of water birds. And so you can see here, Belize City is about in the middle. To the northwest on this, you have Mexico. To the west is Guatemala, and then just to the southeast off the screen is Honduras, so you know where we are. We're kind of on the southeast quadrant of the Yucatan Peninsula. So we'll see a lot of Yucatan endemics that aren't single country endemics, but they're endemic to the Yucatan region, which includes Guatemala, Mexico, and northern Belize.
Hey, Brian,
and my two dots are pretty close here.
Sorry to jump in.
Is to the
Brian, sorry to jump in on you. Can you share your screen for us? We can't. We do enjoy seeing you, pal, but we need it. So here, hit that slideshow. There we go.
That one. Is that better?
No, now we're seeing your Zoom screen. Go to your PowerPoint.
Okay, I'm on the PowerPoint. Slideshow.
All I'm seeing is your Zoom screen. I'm seeing your Google Chrome, which has like your Zoom tab open, and you just scroll down on Zoom.
Right.
So if you go to the bottom of your computer and click on your PowerPoint, is it open down there?
Yeah, is that any better?
No, I'm still seeing your. So on there, when you hit your share screen thing down on the bottom, it should have just kind of pulled up all the windows you were looking at, and if you would have just clicked on the PowerPoint, that should be the one that it's showing. But right now, it's showing your Google Chrome.
Okay, there's the share screen option through. Did that change anything?
Hey, there we go. All right, perfect. And now if you just hit, you can see, yeah, up in the upper left hand, hit that from beginning slide, and it'll make it full screen and put it into
Okay.
slideshow mode.
Is that full screen yet?
It's not, but there we go. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Thanks for your patience, everybody. You got to see how the sausage was made this morning. All right, go ahead, Brian. Sorry to interrupt.
So you've seen this slide. That's Bird's Eye View Lodge. And now this is the country of Belize here. And up in the north central part, we have Lamanai Outpost Lodge and Bird's Eye View Lodge. Bird's Eye View is the farther to the east. And amazingly, they're only about 10 miles apart, but you can't get there from here. So when we go to change from Bird's Eye View to Lamanai Outpost Lodge, we'll go back out to the Northern Highway, drive up to the New River by Orange Walk, and then take a boat down the New River to the New River Lagoon. And this is at the Lamanai Lodge. So it's kind of funny. And then when we finish at Lamanai, we'll drive back to the airport and then drive all the way down to Black Rock Lodge, just so you know where we're going. And as a point of reference for folks that are in Tucson, we're in Pima County. Pima County is bigger than Belize, which I found pretty amazing. And it's about the same size as Massachusetts if you're from the Northeast. And again, this is the Bird's Eye View Lodge, sits right on the Northern Lagoon, which is just fantastic for water birds. And the main reason we'll stay here for 2 nights is that our first full day, we'll take a 4 to 6 hour boat trip down south in the Northern Lagoon there that you can see on the screen. And it's just absolutely full of water birds. Lots of herons, egrets. This is a green heron. In March, I think a couple years ago, we were tallying green herons and we had at least 80 green herons in our boat cruise. And then this is a limpkin, which is kind of a relative to rails, and they're snail specialists. So they live in marshy areas. They're also in South Florida. I don't know if you guys have followed birding in the last 3 or so years. They have just performed this amazing invasion of the southeastern US. It used to be a strictly Florida bird, and now it's getting all through the southeastern states to southeast Texas, even to Colorado, which is just bizarre. So it's really a spreading bird, but we should see them snacking on snails in the Northern Lagoon. And then along the edge of the lagoon are mangrove trees, and this is a mangrove vireo singing. And another one of the Yucatan endemics that we'll look for is this diminutive little Yucatan woodpecker, which looks a lot like the golden-fronted woodpecker from the Yucatan Peninsula, but it's a much smaller bird. And along the edges of the lagoons, we hope to find snail kites, which, like the limpkin, is another snail specialist with that long hooked bill. And look at those long legs and those big toes for grabbing snails out of the water. This is an immature bird. And another aquatic raptor is the black-collared hawk. They catch fish and amphibians and crayfish and things like that on the edge of the lagoons. It's a handsome bird. Kind of the same build as a common blackhawk, really broad wings and short-tailed. Also along the edges of the lagoon is mangrove swallow. Looks a lot like a violet green swallow if you're familiar with that from the Western US. And I like this picture because it shows if you're an aerial insectivore and you're going to catch tiny little things in the air, it's good to have a big target. Look at that wide bill and good eyes. Look at those bulging black eyes on this thing. I think it shows it really well for a bird that's catching mid-sized things out of the air. And that's a common bird along the lagoon edge. And also northern jacana. It walks on the floating vegetation. I think this is a male. I can't remember if this one had chicks or not, but the males do almost all of the incubation, nest creation, and chick rearing. for these birds, and the females might have 2 or 3 males that they're providing with eggs. So it's kind of a neat little natural history thing on this bird. And look at that little spur on his wing right there. It's pretty unique little feature on the northern jacana. And this is a bare-throated tiger heron, an adult bird. The tiger herons were named for the young birds, which are kind of a really heavily barred black and orange. And the boat-billed heron, for obvious reasons, he's got a huge bill and big eyes. They are mostly nocturnal. They look a lot like a night heron because they are nocturnal and they catch things in shallow water at night. And if we're lucky, we'll find another water bird, the huge jabiru, which is a stork, which we might see soaring overhead, or if we're lucky in the wetlands, we'll see one stalking the waters there. Also along the canals and emergent vegetation, we see a lot of green iguanas. This is a big male. They kind of get orangey color with that huge dewlap, and very common. So the green iguana is named for the smaller, the immature animals that are very bright green, but the adult males are orangey like this guy. And if you're a Tucson Audubon fan, I hope everybody is, this is the vermilion flycatcher, which is a common bird in Tucson and also in the lawns around Crooked Tree down there, Bird's Eye View Lodge especially. And if we were lucky, we might get the pinnated bittern poking its head out of the marsh grasses there in Crooked Tree or Lamanai. We'll do a boat trip out of Lamanai as well. And then we'll move, like I said, just 10 miles away, but it'd take a few hours to get there. But that boat cruise down the New River to the Lamanai Outpost Lodge is great birding too. So we'll enjoy that. Getting there is half the fun, and birding too on the boats. I find that birding on the boats, you can get really close to some of those water birds when they're not paying attention. So it's a great way for photos. And all of these photos were taken on my previous trips to Belize or by other guides that did trips for Victor Emanuel Nature Tours. So it's a good selection of what you could see. And if you're interested in photography, what kind of photos you can get. Also in the open country is the lesser yellow-headed vulture, which is a little bit of a misnomer because this bird has an exquisite head for a vulture. It's kind of golden orange with some red highlights, some kind of lavender, bluish purple. I hope we can see one really close, but it looks a lot like a turkey vulture until you see that head up close. It's a kind of an open country marsh bird.
Blue. It's just more.
And Lamanai Outpost Lodge is named for this Lamanai Maya site, which has a history of being occupied for almost 3,000 years, which is much longer than a lot of the Mayan sites in Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras. This is the Mask Temple, and this is just a mile or two away from Lamanai Outpost Lodge, and we will most certainly visit the ruins. And as you can see, it's surrounded by forest, and it's often a great edge habitat to go birding in these Mayan ruins. And one of the birds we'll look for in kind of the scrubbier forest, not as dense as you can see right there at the Lamanai ruins, but this is the Yucatan jay. Handsome bird. This is an adult black bill and a black eye ring with yellow legs. And then the young birds are really unique looking. Yellow bill and that yellow eye ring. And then the juveniles, when they come out of the nest, are even more unique. I haven't really seen one, but they're totally white. If you replace all that black with white, that's what a juvenile Yucatan jay would look like. I think you have to be there in the summer to see that white plumage, but that'd be a cool bird to see someday. And it's not just all Mexican birds down there or Belizean birds, but we have a lot of North American warblers down there. Yellow-throated warbler. This is the prothonotary warbler. One of the local names is swamp candle, which is very appropriate for that glowing head. of the male. And then trying to eat those little birds is the ferruginous pygmy owl that's in the open kind of pine savanna oak forests around Crooked Tree and Lamanai. Out of Lamanai, of course, we'll be right on that New River Lagoon where the river opens up to a big lagoon, and they're famous for their boat trips. And this is a sunset cruise or cocktail cruise. So you can have your binoculars and your camera and a beverage if you wish. This is the cinnamon-bellied saltator, which used to be called grayish saltator if you've been birding for more than 5 years. You remember the name grayish saltator. It's been split 3 ways. And cruising along the forest edge in the rivers or from the vans, we might get lucky and see the howler monkeys. I certainly hope we hear them too. It's an amazing experience to hear them howling in the forest. And if you weren't familiar with what it was going to sound like, they often call before the rains, even at 2 or 3 in the morning. You would surely think the goblins or spirits are after you because it's really a haunting sound. It's pretty cool experience. Another kind of Yucatan region endemic that gets into Belize and Guatemala is this gray-throated chat. Handsome little bird. Used to be thought that it was a warbler. Now it's in the cardinal family with that big bill, similar to our summer tanager, which is in the cardinal family nowadays. And a prize at Lamanai or Black Rock Lodge would be the toady motmot, tiny little thing of the forest understory. Pretty neat little bird. Another Yucatan regional endemic is the rose-throated tanager. Obviously, you can see that kind of relation to the summer tanager with that big, heavy bill. It's kind of a scrubby forest bird. And then more tropical bird is the white-whiskered puffbird, kind of a big head there. And there's also the white-necked puffbird, which we could see around Lamanai or Black Rock Lodge in more forested environments. And then a bird I hope we see, well, everybody hopes we see when you go to the tropics, the keel-billed toucan, which is just a spectacular bird. Fun to see. They're mostly frugivorous, but they will also eat nestlings and eggs of other birds. So the other birds wouldn't be as thrilled to see them as we are. And another thing that Lamanai is famous for is the night cruise on the river or the New River Lagoon. And these are all photos from my colleague Michael O'Brien from a single night cruise. So this is the barn owl, of course, and the northern potu, which is it's a different family from nightjars, but they kind of have a similar look with this enormous mouth with a tiny little bill and huge eyes for catching large flying insects. They kind of act like a flycatcher. They pick these isolated perches on the edge of the forest and they sally out after big moths and beetles at night. That'd be a great one to find. And then Yucatan nightjar is another night bird that we would hope to find cruising the New River. Kind of like a whippoorwill. And then we'll move down. It'll be a long day because we have to cruise up the New River Lagoon, back to the highway, down to the airport where we started, and then we'll switch vans to and then drive down a couple hours to Black Rock Lodge. But we'll break that up with birding and a lunch stop somewhere along the way. But this is in more hilly terrain. That northern area where I was just describing is very, very flat with lots of water. And there is a river right there, the McCall River, going right by the Black Rock Lodge. This is the dining area, and it's spectacular birding right off the porch there. And you can see, I think this is right over the river, so you can see the cliffs on the back side there. And if we're lucky, since we're there for 5 nights, we'll have 4 full days birding, and I hope we find the orange-breasted falcon sitting up on those cliffs above the river right around the lodge. also lots of other raptors are possible out of Black Rock area, as well as great forest birding, like the white collared manakin. That's kind of a male doing his display, sticking out his collar. And then another Mayan site that we'll visit from Black Rock Lodge. I think it's about 45 minutes away, maybe an hour drive. Certainly worth birding. Again, you can see the nice trees along the edge is Zunan Tunich. It's it wasn't as occupied as long as Lamanai, but it does have a several hundred-year occupation period in the early 6th century AD to maybe the 10th century. But great birding around the edges of this one as well. And in the forests around Black Rock Lodge, we hope to see the royal flycatcher. I've never seen it with its crest up, but it has a spectacular fanned crest that's red and blue. But that's a really tough one to see with the crest up. Slaty-tailed trogon is a big trogon that's fairly common around Black Rock Lodge and some of our other forest destinations. That's a male with this greenish head and red belly. And yellow-winged tanager is a common kind of edge bird. We could see that at Zunan Tunich. I hope we can go owling, probably at Lamanai and Black Rock Lodge both, but we might see the Middle American screech owl. We will have a couple of parrots available for us. Hopefully we'll track them all down. Olive-throated parakeet eating flowers here. And in the same tree last spring was red lord parrot. White-fronted Amazon or white-fronted parrot is also around Lamanai, and yellow lord parrot is a Yucatan endemic that we might see in the savannas around Lamanai or Crooked Tree. And that's it for the birds that I have. This is the ornate hawk eagle, which is one of 3 species of hawk eagles that we could see. Our best chances for the hawk eagles are around Black Rock Lodge. We could also see black hawk eagle and black and white hawk eagle. So they're all pretty spectacular. And we should see one of them, and we might see all 3, which would be great. One of the local guides at Black Rock Lodge, which we will employ, has been posting amazing pictures in the last couple of years of black and white hawk eagle right around Black Rock. So that's one that I've seen flying at a distance and sitting at a distance, but I've never seen it really well. So we would be really lucky if we could get that bird. But I'm happy to take some questions. Of course, we're going to see close to 300 species of birds. So I just put a few representative birds that we might track down. And Donito, if you want to kind of gather some questions and shoot them to me, or other folks, if you're online and still listening, if you have questions about the tours or the birds, let me know.
Yeah, you bet. Here, before I get to that, just a reminder, just to let people know, over in the chat, I did put a link to basically a document that's going to have the full itinerary and a lot of the details about the trip. So you can look at that in your own kind of leisure. Catherine has a good question. Is vegan food available on the trip, or just any other dietary restrictions that people may have?
Generally, these lodges are pretty good about accommodating people's dietary needs. Bird's Eye View Lodge, that first one that I showed you, is a little simpler food preparation, but I think with enough warning, they can do that, and I can do a little bit as well, but I'll have to reach out to them to confirm that. But I wouldn't worry about that at Lamanai or Black Rock Lodge. They're used to tourism more so than Crooked Tree.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian. Kathy has a question. Could you describe how much of the day is devoted to birding and how early the birding walks start? And, just kind of give us a general idea of what a typical day looks like.
Yeah, it generally gets, even though we're going to be kind of in winter, early spring down there, it can get hot. So we definitely want to get out early. I don't know exactly how we'll work our day, but I'm envisioning uh, some pre-breakfast bird walks that are certainly optional if you don't want to get up early. I think we could be out by 6 or 6:30 for an hour or so, then come back for breakfast at most of the lodges. Sometimes we might do an early breakfast and then go birding, but I don't think we would start our days before 6 or 6:30 meeting time, unless we do some owling. And of course, you would be talking about a 5 o'clock meeting time if you're going to go owling.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brian. Great question, Catherine. I was wondering that myself. Um, Catherine has a question, and she asks, how severe are the insects? And what can we do to kind of mitigate those?
There's a reason why there's so many birds in the tropics, and that's because there's bugs. That's a good question, and I had it on my list of things to discuss with you guys. The mosquitoes are around mostly at dusk and at night, so that night boat cruise, if there's no wind, and of course, if there's a little bit of a breeze, that can do wonders for dispersing the mosquitoes. And this is kind of the tail end of the wet season, so I suspect there will be bugs around. I pretty much always wear long sleeves. I've been the last few years starting to wear sun gloves, which cover most of my hand for UV protection. But you can also treat those and your pants, socks, and shoes, which I'm most certainly going to do with that permethrin, which is actually an insecticide. It's not a bug spray like DDT or DEET. So you treat all of your shoes, socks, pants, shirts with permethrin before you go down there, and you let them dry. And then it's good for several washings. So it would be good for the whole trip. And then it gets knocked off mechanically by the washing. So if you want to preserve that, or I usually just kind of use them as regular clothing after that, after my trip is done. But permethrin, I would strongly recommend that for it's tick repellent, chigger repellent. I don't know if y'all have had the pleasure of chiggers, but those things are terrible.
Yeah.
And also it would be good for the flying insects like mosquitoes. So I'm definitely going to treat all my clothes, shoes with, and maybe my sun gloves too, for that added protection from insects and particularly chiggers. You can also try to avoid the chiggers by staying on the well-beaten trails, shorter grass. But it's if you sit down in leaf litter or you wander through waist-high grass that you can get the chiggers. But it's certainly of a concern, but we can take those precautions.
Anybody
Any
that's
other
birded,
questions?
yeah, we had a couple. I was just going to say anybody that's birded down in Patagonia the last month or so is well aware of chiggers. They've been pretty bad down there this summer.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, a couple questions. And Kathy has a question about the weather. And I know we're going to be in a couple of different environments, so it may differ, but if you can just kind of just talk about the weather a little bit and what we could expect there.
It's mostly going to be pretty warm. Again, kind of tail end of the wet season, so it could be pretty humid. Very pleasant early and nighttime. I'm definitely going to have long sleeves for the temperature as well, especially if you're cruising on the boat early. And then I envision, kind of having, especially on the hot afternoons, an hour or two off. I think Bird's Eye View Lodge and Black Rock have smaller pools that you can take a splash in. So definitely some afternoon time off, as well as maybe some afternoon optional walks if you're hardcore like Danito and me. We'll be birding as much as we can, seeking the shaded areas, of course, in the afternoons. but I envision it would be pretty warm in the afternoon, and I don't think you could ever call it cold. With the exception is we'll take one long day trip, very early start from Black Rock Lodge in the van. We probably have almost a 2-hour drive up to Mountain Pine Ridge. So a very different environment, probably 10 to 15 species up there that we won't see elsewhere on the trip. And that gets up to maybe 2,000 feet elevation. So it might almost be cool up there. But again, because of the long drive time, we won't be there right at dawn. So I really think for the most part, a long sleeve shirt or a light jacket for those evening outings will be sufficient. And then of course, afternoon, if it is sunny, it's going to be pretty warm. But again, I stick with the long sleeves for sun protection myself.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Mark has a question. What is the size of the group going down there?
We have 12 participants and me and Danito. And then in various places, we might have 1 or 2 local guides. So I'd say that's a pretty good ratio for group size. But the maximum from Tucson Audubon, including me and Danito, is going to be 14.
All right, let's see. I don't have anything in the chat at the moment. I'll give people a couple of seconds. But just so everybody knows, so I'm going to here as soon as we're done with this event. It takes me a little bit of time, but like I said earlier, I'm going to upload this onto YouTube. So before I head home for the day, everybody's going to receive an email from me that it will have the link to the YouTube, but I'll also put some helpful links in there. I'll link the trip itinerary that I linked out here, so you can click on that easily. I'll CC Brian on it, so if you need to contact him, you can do that. But just know, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. If I can't answer it, I can get you connected to the person that can. So let's see real quick. Catherine had another question pop up. Catherine asked, how many scopes will be available, and do participants need to bring one?
That's a good question. I'm planning to bring mine. Danito, are you going to bring a scope?
I am going to bring a scope.
So that's 2 at least. Oftentimes the local guides will have one as well. So with a group that size, that's minimally 2 scopes, maybe 3. So that would be great. You're certainly welcome to carry them if you want. If you're going to be active digiscoper, I would encourage you to bring your own scope so you can have all the time you want with birds. Of course, on our boat trips, there wouldn't really be space or the ability to use a scope. And so we'll do, the cruise down the New River, a daytime cruise at Lamanai, a Crooked Tree cruise from Bird's Eye View Lodge, and of course, nighttime. But that would be really challenging to use a scope on any of those things. But a lot of our birding in the group would be on roads that would be very easily birdable for a 3rd or 4th scope. So if you're a scope person, you can feel free to bring it.
Wonderful. Got a couple of questions came in. Kathy asks, what range of lens would you recommend for this trip? 500 millimeters, longer? Question mark.
Yeah, certainly for bird photography, kind of the minimum is 500. If you're talking a full frame sensor, if you have a crop sensor, a 500 is usually more than enough, because that usually gets you to 850 millimeter equivalent. But I carry the R5 and a 500, the 100 to 500 zoom on the R5, which is full frame. And I wish I often had a little bit more reach, but with all my other stuff that I'm carrying, I'm not going to bring a bigger lens. But I do pretty well with that. And this is, especially the boat trips, we get pretty close to birds. So the 500 is very, very good for that. In the forested environments and on foot, maybe something more to 800. But again, if you have a crop sensor, that 500 would get you a good reach there.
And then we have a kind of a related question from Mark. So, I don't know how much you want to double dip on this, but he did ask, how close to the birds do we typically get? And then the second part was, is a super telephoto lens recommended for taking photos? So you may have already hit on the second part, but just in general, how close are we to the birds? Are we feeder watching? Are we looking up on hills? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There are a few places with hummingbird feeders, so we'll be close. I haven't been to Lamanai for a few years, so I don't know if they have a feeder set up there. But again, you definitely want a minimum of 500, so that gets into the super telephoto range for birds. And what was the first part, Danito,
Just in general,
of
kind of
that
how
question?
close to the birds do we get?
Okay. Again, the boat trips are very good for getting good looks at large birds. You saw my photos. A lot of the water birds were from the boat on these very trips that we're going to take. And then Danito and I and the local guides will be using playback to lure birds in, for the forest birds in for photography, and just to view them, to get them out of the edge of the woods. And so that's very helpful for getting birds closer and getting good looks at them. But we definitely will work on that. But it's certainly not a photography focused trip where we're going to be using setups or blinds or anything like that. So it's just kind of opportunistic photography when birds kind of appear for us. But we'll be working on them to get them out for everybody to see.
That sounds exciting. All right, let's see. We don't have anything in the chat at the moment. If anyone has a question that you'd like to ask Brian, you can also unmute yourself and ask. Um, let's see. Let's see. Mark has a question. What is the ratio of seeing birds versus just hearing birds?
Well, we'll always try to see birds. Sometimes your night birds, you can't get them to come out. That the screech owl that I showed the picture of, that was just driving by on a road, but they're notoriously hard to see using the tape to call them out to the edge. But that bird was hunting the edge of the road and we drove right to it. But generally, we're going to try to see everything. I know most folks don't like herd birds, but you'd be amazed at what responds to tape. Least grebes respond to tape. Sometimes the shorebirds and water birds respond to tape. Certainly all the small songbirds. It'll be a little early for breeding season there, but things will be territorial, and so things will be coming out. We can also use the screech owl or the northern pygmy owl, which often elicits a mobbing behavior from the little birds. So even if they're not territorial, they kind of come to that owl call to come check out what the fuss is, just like pishing in the US. So we're going to try to see everything. There probably will be 5 or 10 birds that we are herd only, but when you're talking 300 species, I think that's a pretty good ratio.
Yeah, I think so. Kathy has a question. Of course, we all love birds, but what other animals could we see on this trip, whether those are mammals, amphibians, or whatever it is?
Yeah, there's a few because it is decidedly winter time, even though you're in the tropics. Those cooler, relatively nighttime temperatures keep the snakes and things at bay. So I love snakes. I would love to see 1 or 2 snakes in 10 days. I don't know that we would see any snakes like that. A variety of lizards, brown basilisk, spiny-tailed iguana, green iguana, some other little terrestrial lizards, probably some frogs and toads. The mammals, we might see a goody. Of course, we're in the realm of cats, but tropical cats are incredibly hard to see. I know on the nighttime cruise one time out of Lamanai, I saw, let me see, I'm trying to think of the name. It's a Mexican porcupine that's arboreal, small little thing that I've seen once, and I know that the other tours to Lamanai see those pretty regularly. Little porcupine thing and a goody. And we would be lucky to see white-tailed deer or brocket deer. but we have 10 days, so we're going to spend a lot of time out there looking. And I love all the snakes and reptiles, so we'll see what we can find. As well as the insects. We should see a great variety of moths and butterflies that time of year too.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Brian. And then Kathy had a question about the food at the lodges. The question is, will we be able to enjoy local food at the lodges? So kind of, do you know,
Yeah, but
how yeah, go ahead.
they have a lot of local ingredients, and especially Crooked Tree Lodge, because it's kind of a simple lodge. It's kind of very Creole, Belizean style food at Crooked Tree, at Bird's Eye View Lodge. I don't know about Lamanai or Black Rock. Those are kind of more catering to the tourists. But they're all going to be using local ingredients. And I'm not sure if we're going to be doing buffet breakfasts or probably menus in the evening. But it's food prepared for Belizean, but for tourists. So that's my best answer. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't have a question right now, but just Art chimed in. He said he's been on a Brian Gibbons group before, and you will definitely see birds. So yeah, Art just wanted to kind of give you a plug
That's
there.
great, Art. Thank you. We had a great time in Mexico in January with Luke.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting you as well, Art. Mark has a question. Will time be spent visiting the Mayan ruins? I know we saw a few questions of them. We said we'll be birding around them, but will we actually have time to kind of visit them and spend some time in the ruins?
Yeah, we're going to dedicate some time to those ruins that I showed the pictures of. The Lamanai ruins are just a mile or so away from the Lamanai Outpost Lodge. And that entrance road going to the ruins is fantastic birding. And then, like I said, from those clearings and from the top of those ruins, if there's folks that are able to, you don't have to climb up, but sometimes you can get up 40 or 50 feet and you're treetop level, and if there's a fruiting fig tree or something right there, it's awesome birding. But we'll be walking through both of those ruins that I showed, admiring the ruins and looking for birds.
That's great. I'm very excited about that. And Kathy asked, is there any particular reason for scheduling this tour this time of year over other months and other times of the year?
Um, Mostly in Central America, we try to go January through March, April. By the time you're getting into April, it's very, very dry and very, very hot. So it's just kind of splitting the difference. The dry season is the main thing in Central America. That, as you see with Tucson, if you're familiar with Tucson, although the wet season is more protracted in Central America from June through early December. So we want to be out of that area where we know we're going to get rain, and birds are starting to get active with singing for territoriality and things like that for the spring. But that's the main reason, avoiding the most rainiest period. Yep.
Excellent. Makes a lot of sense. All right, let's see. I don't have any more in the chat, I don't believe. Make sure I didn't miss anybody. I believe I got them all. Well, if we don't have any more questions, and again, I know even if we wrap up, if you're like me, you'll probably think of 5 different questions as soon as we get off the call here. So again, when I sent out the email today, I'm going to CC Brian on there. And so whether it's reaching out to me, reaching out to Brian, we're more than happy to answer questions for you. We're happy to. We hope you come with us. I know this is going to be a lot of fun. I've birded with Brian several times. We always have a great time. I'm really excited to get down there. So if we don't have any other questions at this time, I always like to ask everybody to just unmute themselves. Tell Brian thank you. We really appreciate his time and being here today. We appreciate Victor Emanuel Nature Tours for partnering with us for this. And personally, I just want to say thank you for including me. Actually, January 24th, the first day of the trip, is my birthday. And so I can't imagine a better way of spending it than heading down to Belize and seeing a bunch of lifers that I've never had the chance to see before. So yeah,
I
go
promise
ahead.
to get you some lifers for your birthday.
Excellent. I'm very excited. All right. And so, yeah, if anybody has any other questions, you can shout them out. Or if not, let's just all tell Brian thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been my pleasure. I'm looking forward to birding Belize
Absolutely.
with some of y'all.
Thank you.
See you guys in January.
Yeah,
Yep.
see you, Art. Looking forward to meeting you.
All right.
And Danito, thank you for coordinating this and getting me online. I don't know what my problem was earlier, but we got it figured out.
Hey, we got it. I always tell people, give us another 4 years of doing this. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Again, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you for your support of Tucson Audubon. Thank you for support of Victor Emanuel Nature Tours. And we hope to all see you out birding soon. All righty. Take care, everybody.